Well, didn't Red Bull leave their stamp on the United States Grand Prix? Here we are at another situation where predicting before the race, you would have assumed Mercedes would have the upper hand. But once again, as we are seeing this season, Red Bull have come in and basically made races they shouldn't be performing great out, or supposedly haven't performed great out in the past, making them their own and really starting to reel Mercedes in. We didn't have the next 3 races coming up last year, so that's the United States Grand Prix, which is what we're talking about today, the Mexico Grand Prix, which is what we'll be talking about next time, and the Brazilian Grand Prix, which will be the one after that. And then we've got the Qatar Grand Prix, which we've never been to. And then we've got the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, which may not even be built in time. And then we'll end with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which we will go to every season into the future without doubt, because money. Mercedes had kind of come into this weekend, stirring their stuff a little bit, feeling like they had the upper hand, ready to extend that 36-point lead they had on Red Bull in the Constructors. But my, were Red Bull ready to say, not today, son? Talking through the grid, the top 3 positions of Max Verstappen first, Lewis Hamilton second, and Sergio Perez third remained the same from qualifying through to the race. Verstappen had an incredible defensive race to keep Hamilton behind him in the closing stages for the last 15-20 laps. He did an absolutely phenomenal job. It was a really good kind of moment to see. This Red Bull isn't just here fighting for the championship out of sheer dumb luck. It's really here to fight, and it's really managed to find pace at races where you wouldn't suspect it to be so strong at. So Red Bull doing a stand-up job this year, really looking like contenders to be beaten for both championships at the moment. If they can continue this trajectory through the rest of the season, it's going to be very difficult for Mercedes to keep one hand on not just one, but both drivers and constructors. But the top 3 were the same, with Verstappen leading Hamilton across the line at the end, ahead of Perez, giving Red Bull a 1-3. A very good, nice chunk of points, bringing that gap now down to just 23 points in the Constructors' Championship. It is still mathematically possible for Mercedes to take the championship early, but as we go at the moment, with Red Bull having such good performance, that is dwindling race on race. It is looking more like this is going down to the wire, and it's looking more like it's going to be in Red Bull's favour when we get to that final race of the season. Ferrari have really been seeming to look like they're getting back on track with their pace, starting to outperform McLaren in races as well, and as we know, that is a tightly fought 3rd place in Constructors between Ferrari and McLaren. Obviously, Norris has got a great set of points, currently sitting 4th in the overall Drivers' Championship, so he's had a really good season so far, but Ferrari are coming back. They seem to have used their engine upgrades and the penalties they took in the last few races to get those engine upgrades into both Leclerc and Sainz's cars. They've really done a good job there, developing those engines to be more competitive. Now, they're nowhere near the performance of Mercedes or Red Bull for sure. No one is going to touch those 2 teams, as I've said before, until the end of the season. Maybe not moving forwards, because we go into our engine lock at the end of this year, and also we take the shift to focus on aerodynamics. P.S. I still don't think that's going to make very much of a difference next year, but at least now we've got Red Bull in the fight. Maybe we'll have some fights for the championship that are a little more interesting than Mercedes versus Mercedes. Ferrari making really good progress, starting 5th and 6th on the grid, finishing 4th and 7th, with Leclerc up in 4th. A consistent position for Leclerc. He's pretty good at bringing that car home in 4th. Normally it's a 4th and a 6th for Ferrari, with McLaren coming in 5th and 7th, but this time a 4th and 7th for Ferrari, with Sainz down in 7th. A good job from them. Keep an eye on them as we go, because the gap between them and McLaren is coming down. As I was saying, they are outperforming McLaren at the moment, and again, a bit like Red Bull, if they continue this trajectory and the performance they're showing, it really could come down to Abu Dhabi. They're going into the final race with that points advantage, which is obviously the better place to be in. You're the team who just has to finish ahead of the other guy, really, to keep the result you've got. It's down to the other team to do the grafting and do the hard work to overtake and to make sure they finish enough ahead of you to reclaim that deficit in points. So it's looking like we're going to have some tasty battles at the end of the season, which is always good. It would be lovely if there was 6 cars fighting for the WDC and the WCC. That would be amazing. Maybe we're getting back close to that. 2012 really was the last time we had that kind of competition. So maybe, just maybe, with the engine locks coming in next year and the shift to aerodynamics, maybe we're getting to that kind of position where it is going to be more than 2 teams fighting for the championship. I think that's really important for a sport, especially motorsport like this. Dominance is a killer of any sport, and we've seen it quite rightly do that to Formula One in the last few years. So the Netflix effect and this Red Bull resurgence, if you will, in this year has really helped bring this. Also, speaking of the Netflix effect, just momentarily, wow, were there a lot of fans at the United States Grand Prix. That was insane. It was almost like the dreaded C word never happened. Everything was back to normal, and I just wanted to be in that crowd. Probably not, because I might have got sick, but you know, that's my point. Things seem to start to be moving back to a semblance of normal, if you will. It was just really nice to see the grandstands full, hear the crowds in the background as the cars whiz past, because obviously these car engines, the V6 turbos, are just not as loud as the V8s or V10s behind them, so you can in fact hear the audiences and crowds in the stadiums. But it was really nice to see, and really impressive job from Liberty opening the doors to Netflix in the way they have in the Drive to Survive series to really kind of bring a new audience. And it just goes to show the effectiveness of exclusive access, behind closed doors access, but also the brilliant effect of key players, if you will. For example, Daniel Ricciardo is almost a star of Netflix Drive to Survive, and I predict that a lot of American fans who have joined via Drive to Survive to watch Formula One will be Ricciardo supporters, because he is such a big asset to that series, as he has been in the first 3 seasons and probably will continue to be so because he's a fan favourite. Saying that though, the results of the F1 fan voice came back out at the United States Grand Prix. We are really taking a verge. I will go back to the grid momentarily. But interestingly, I think it was Lando Norris was voted the favourite driver. Definitely for under 25-year-olds. I don't know, I'm going to flash some stats on the screen now. Wow, look at that one. I didn't see that one coming. How amazing! I can't believe it. And I'm also going to leave a link down in the description box below for you to go check out the F1 fan voice survey results at their entirety, kind of see what the fans said. But it's very interesting to see this. I think the last time they did one was 2015, 2017? No, 2017 was WEC, so it must have been 2015 when Liberty took over from Eccleston. I might have my dates right there. Apologies if I don't. And if I don't, editing Alice is going to be making me look like an absolute idiot at the moment. But yeah, it's interesting to see the progression between the first survey they did a few years back and now this one, since Liberty took over, since, I don't know, access to Formula One's become a little bit more open than it probably has been in the past. But enough rambling, that should have been at the end. My bad. Let's go back to the grid. Speaking of Ricciardo, he finished 5th this weekend ahead of Bottas in the other Mercedes. Not a great race from Bottas, and obviously with Red Bull scoring a 1-3, Mercedes really need him to come up. It almost seems like now Perez has found his footing in the team. Bottas kind of hasn't. He's had some good races, don't forget. He qualified 4th this weekend. He finished 6th, which isn't awful for the second fastest, nay, maybe fastest car on the grid. 6th is not great, especially when 2 of your rivals are finishing ahead of you quite distantly. But, you know, it's a decent race. It's still some points on the table. He has been doing a little bit better since announcing his departure from Mercedes, so maybe that's had a positive impact. I'm sure it has. It's like stresses off the shoulders. We can relax a bit more. We can relax a bit more and just enjoy ourselves in racing now for Bottas, where the pressure's kind of off him a little bit, but still there is the constructors to win, so he does still need to be fighting in there for Mercedes. A bit of a disappointing race for Norris, who finished where he qualified, down in P8. Yeah, not the best performance, obviously being outperformed by Ferrari, both cars finishing ahead of Norris. Ricciardo managing to get between the 2 Ferraris, but still a good points haul from Ferrari and outscoring McLaren overall in constructors as well. These are the fights you got to keep an eye on, guys. You got to watch the Ferraris and the McLarens, you got to watch the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. there's stuff to watch this year. It's fantastic. I'm loving it. Finally, to wrap up the top 10, Yuki Tsunoda had a great performance, not only qualifying in Q3 and making a decent Q3 start, but finishing the race 9th ahead of Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Another good drive from Vettel, really seeming to fend better in the Aston Martin than he has in years gone past. Very much could be the pressure effect. A lot of drivers feel that if they move out of a highly pressurized team after being in a pressurized team, it's like the weights off your shoulders. You can really just enjoy the racing and get down to the crux of enjoying it for why you enjoy it. So, it's going to be interesting to watch these midfield teams next year when these new regulations come in. The aero regulations, which was supposed to be this year, but because of the dreaded C word, got pushed back to next year. So 2022 is the year to be watching. We've got the aero change, we've got the engine freezes, and we've also got sustainable fuels, I think, unless that's changed. But they should also be coming back in next year. Back in? Not back in. Coming in for the first time next year as well. We had 3 retirees, which were Gasly, Alonso, and Ocon. Bad weekend for Alpine, who all retired from the race with some form of mechanical issue. Next up is the Mexico Grand Prix. Not predictably a good circuit for Mercedes. They've done okay around there in the past, but the layout of the track and stuff and the high humidity on the engines doesn't normally suit their car very well. So, favors on Red Bull for next weekend at the Mexico Grand Prix. But we will see if Hamilton can do any damage limitation or if he can finish ahead of both Verstappen and Perez to take the win, to take some decent points needed, and to start clawing back at Verstappen, who's really starting to pull away a little bit in the World Drivers' Championship with his points lead there. Have we talked about next year's season? I don't know if we have. I can't remember when the calendar was released because I did so many races back to back to back to back. I can't remember if I've already spoken about it, but I'm going to talk about it now briefly in our other news section, which should have been all of the other stuff I said earlier as well. Oopsie, my bad, kind of jumped the gun. But yes, the 2022 calendar has been released. There are 23 races predicted. Quite a few of those are triple headers and some double headers. I think there's only like 3 or 4 of those races that are actually single standalone races. So it's going to be a busy one next season for everybody involved. Interestingly, one of Formula One's eco moves when they announced their stuff back in 2019, I think they announced this stuff, or maybe the start of 2020. Sometime around there they announced it, was that they were going to orchestrate the calendar so that continents were done at the same time to reduce on travel, air travel, freight travel, all the travel, cut down on air miles and stuff to be a little bit more eco-friendly. But turns out they're not doing that, like at all. We start in Bahrain and then shoot across to Australia and then Miami's in there randomly. And I'm just going to quickly pop the 2022 provisional calendar up on the screen here so you can see. And as you can see here, there is a lot of this that does not make any sense whatsoever in terms of the logistical standpoint. So good job there, Formula One. Good job in keeping that nice and eco-friendly, as you said. But hopefully sustainable fuels are coming in next year, which is a big talking point in the moment. These are fuels that are basically made, same kind of principle as petrol and diesel is at the moment, but instead of burning fossil fuels like coal and oil to get them, you have to burn biodegradable substances like plants and plants, I guess. But basically it's just an eco version of petrol. They're starting to bring this stuff in. I think it starts at like a percentage, so 90% of the fuel they're running will be the normal combustion engine oil fuel, they use now, and 10% becomes a biofuel, and they start to slowly increase it. They're also doing this in road cars. It's definitely available in the UK. I don't know about where you are, but for me, there is a certain type of petrol. If you put it in your car, it has got a percentage of biofuel in it, so it is better for the environment to be running, which is all good news. Lovely good things coming out of that. But that's all I have to talk about for the US Grand Prix. We've got a week's break and then we come back for the Mexico Grand Prix, the first of 3 in our final triple header of the season. Then we have a week break and then our final double header of the season because it's 2-minute races, but we will talk about that some other time that isn't right now. Do let me know what you thought of the United States Grand Prix, whether it had you on the edge of your seat or whether it was a little bit of a snooze fest. Let me know your predictions of the Mexico Grand Prix. Let me know who you think is coming out on top. Will Red Bull reign supreme as is predicted, or will Mercedes pull something out of their sleeve and steal it out from underneath? Please continue this conversation down in the comment box below. I will see you there for more Formula One discussions. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast as always. If you enjoyed this video, go show that like button some Formula One love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video. Cheerleader. She didn't like a cheerleader thing for the cheerleaders that were on the... I don't know what I'm doing. It's a long day.